Hello, all you wonderful dissidents. As you could probably tell by, the framing I have, I'm at work. Probably hear the truck in the background, but that's a price you pay. Um, so, I don't know if you've heard, you probably have, but there are elements of the left now that, after all that we've been through and all that we've dealt with, are calling for a truce or amnesty around the whole COVID lockdowns and all the damage they did. I mean, the fucking nerve of these people that, after everything that you've done, the relentless insistence on destroying the world, the economy, and all the misery that you've brought along with it. I mean, people died, elders died, people died in the hospital, isolated, without their families being able to come visit them. I mean, just these brutal, dictatorial, tyrannical decisions that were made, and none of it was needed. And that now they want to play like we were acting in the dark, that we didn't really understand the virus and how bad it was. How could you not understand? We understood on the right. I mean, there was the initial period in the first couple weeks or even about the first week, where we didn't know what we were dealing with. And then slowly, as the panic subsided a little bit amongst the more rational parts of our population, we started asking questions and looking at what we did know. And it quickly became evident within, the maximum time frame of about 30 days that what we were dealing with wasn't a world killer. And that it wasn't just dropping people in droves, that what we were dealing with was a mass hysteria. And so I just want to cover the story a little bit, look at the story the article in the Alantic, and maybe another news source too. And so hang in there and let's get into it. All right, so let's just go ahead and start off. The story that everybody's talking about was published in the Atlantic, but from what I understand, this isn't the only person that's kind of floated this idea. So let's declare a pandemic amnesty. We need to forgive one another for what we did and said when we were in the dark about COVID. Emily Oster. No. The simple answer, boil it all down. Yes, I'm going to make a video and we're going to talk about it a little bit more, but the simple answer is no. Everybody on the left, from the base level up, from the most brain damaged amongst them, all the way up to the psychotic, evil monsters who run the party, we're all in favor of locking us down, weaponizing the federal government, weaponizing the state governments, to impose their will. And there's no forgiveness for that. The damage that they have done is something that we're going to live with for a decade or more if we do recover. If we keep on spending the way that we're spending now, we're never going to recover. But there were trillions of dollars stolen. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This money is just gone. They wrote blank checks and just started slinging cash. And they, of course, what they always do is, they paid their little, pennies to the people. But it really all just went into politicians and pharmaceutical companies' pockets and bloated government organizations. So, let's see, scroll down here and look at this article. In April 2020, with nothing else to do, my family took an enormous number of hikes. We all wore cloth masks that I had made myself. We had a family hand signal, which the person in front would use if someone was approaching on the trail and we needed to put on our mask. Once, when another child got too close to my 4-year-old son on a bridge, he yelled at her, social distancing. We have done irreparable harm to our young. We literally, I'm just waiting to see how many these small children grow up as hypochondriacs and recluses. We took kids in their most formative years and we launched into a fear campaign, and especially liberal adult parents. I even see it today still with little masked up kids and teenagers who walk around with masks on. I live personally across from a high school, and so I see kind of like a glimpse into our youth and unfortunately our future. And I would say probably even today, as of today, which is November 1st, 2020, I would probably 10% of those kids, those high school kids, still wear masks, still walk around with a face diaper on, thinking that it's going to do something for them. And they're not even thinking. There's no computation going on in their head. They're not actually thinking of what the mask does or doesn't do. They've just become comfortable with it. So these precautions were totally misguided. Yeah, you think we kind of said it from the whole, from the very start. And I guarantee you this person was somebody who, at the very least, gave the evil eye to a non-masker out in public, or, treated them like a leper. So in April 2020, no one got the coronavirus for passing someone else hiking. Outdoor transmission was vanishingly rare. Our cloth masks made out of old bandanas wouldn't have done anything anyway. But the thing is, we didn't know. We all knew. But you weren't listening. This is what happens when you zero in on propaganda sites. CNN, MSNBC, they're all just propaganda sites. And yes, Fox News and whatever, they lean right. But you are more likely to get factual information out of them than you are out of the left-leaning news sources. The left-leaning news sources wants to capture you into a narrative. And so if you spend your time there and that's where you get your sources of information, you're just going to be a pawn in the narrative, especially if you don't have critical thinking, which seems to be something that's completely lacking on the left. They will buy hook, line, sinker that there are more than two genders when nature itself stares them in the face and they can't point to one example. But yet they will still demand that there are more. Where? Show me. I have been reflecting on this lack of knowledge thanks to a class I'm teaching at Brown University on COVID. You shouldn't be teaching any classes on anything. If you are so gullible and susceptible as to fall for every single line of the left's narrative, you don't need to be in a classroom. We spent several lectures reliving the first year of pandemic, discussing the many important choices we had to make under conditions of tremendous uncertainty. Some of these choices turned out better than others. To take an example close to our own work, there is an emerging, if not universal, consensus that schools in the U.S. were closing for too long. The health crisis of in-school spread were relatively low, whereas the cost to students' well-being and educational process were high. The latest figures on learning loss are alarming, except for the conservative states that got their kids back to school as quickly as possible. Those are leading now the schools that are the nation's educational system. The left-leaning states, the blue states that decided it was a great idea to basically keep their kids out of school, they're the ones suffering the most. But in spring and summer of 2020, we had only glimmers of information. Reasonable people who cared about children and teachers, advocated on both sides for the reopening debate. It says here, another example, when the vaccines came out, we lacked definitive data on the relative effectiveness of the Johnson & Johnson shot versus the mRNA options from Pfizer and Moderna. The mRNA vaccines have won out. Even here, her cognitive dissonance won't allow her to tell you, to let you know, or to even admit that none of these are a vaccine. None of them are effective. A vaccine you take and you're immune from something. You don't have to get boosters. You might have to get a series to make you fully immune. Some vaccines do work that way. But mostly when you take your vaccine shot, you are vaccinated. Now here we go once again. This shows you right here that there's no actual desire for an amnesty or a truce or understanding, let alone an apology, which, after all that's been done and all the damage that's been done, an apology isn't going to get you anywhere. But right here, this right here really typifies everything. Obviously, some people intended to mislead and made wildly irresponsible claims. Who was that? Remember when the public health community had to spend a lot of time and resources urging Americans not to inject themselves with bleach? That never happened. That never happened. There wasn't some epidemic of people injecting themselves with bleach. Trump made an offhanded comment about the bleach killing the virus, the coronavirus, and if there was something that doctors could do that they could utilize that basically killing power of bleach. He wasn't saying go out and get bleach and inject yourself. I mean, to a lefty who takes everything in a literal sense and says, oh my God, it's a person in power and therefore they have authority and people are going to blindly follow them. No, that's a leftist trait. Nobody on the right does that. And so that was bad. Misinformation was and remains a huge problem. What misinformation? All the misinformation is on your side, the left's side. But most errors were made by people who were working in earnest for the good of society. Don't even get me started. The good of society. What does that remind you of? You can work in earnest for the good of society. You openly called for the military in cases to forcefully inject people from something that we all knew had a death rate of 0.01%. I mean, it says here, given the amount of uncertainty, almost every position was taken on every topic. And on every topic, somebody was eventually proved right, and someone else was proved wrong. In some instances, the right people were right for the wrong reasons. In other instances, they had a understanding of the available information. All right, the only people that consistently have been proved wrong on this subject is the left. They make false claims. Vaccinated. If you get vaccinated, you can't pass on the virus. The virus stops with you. You remember that whole thing? Wear a mask. You'll stop transmission. Remember that? A mask will protect you. Remember the 6 foot distancing. Remember that? All these things were lies. Every bit of it. All right, so here she's saying the people who got it right for whatever reason may want to gloat. Those who got it wrong for whatever reason may feel defensive and retrench into a position that doesn't accord with the facts. All of this gloating and defensiveness continues to gobble up a lot of social energy and drive the culture wars, especially on the internet. Yes, people are fucking pissed. You use the power of the government to take people's jobs, livelihoods, have their families die lonely in the hospital. You killed people by putting COVID-infected people into nursing homes. People are fucking pissed. You've destroyed the world economy, the supply chain. You've robbed us of our future with the spending that happened. This was open, naked lies and theft and power seizure. People are pissed off. And we're not interested in reconciling anything, especially with somebody who is even now, you were making excuses. You should be groveling and begging for forgiveness, but instead you want to make excuses and still half-heartedly defend your position. So these decisions are heated, unpleasant, and ultimately unproductive. So let's just forget about it. Let's forget about the crimes done against humanity in the furtherance of power grabbing and profits and election meddling. In the face of so much uncertainty, getting something right had a hefty element of luck. And similarly, getting something wrong wasn't a moral failing. There was no hefty element of luck. The people who were getting things right were esteemed scientists who were banned from most platforms if they said anything against the vaccine or the narrative, and the people who were getting it right were just following common sense facts and proven science like natural immunity, something that we've understood for, at least 100 years. We've understood natural immunity. So, and the people getting it wrong were getting it wrong either maliciously to further a cause, or they were just ignorant and being led like sheeps, or they're just so far into their leftist religion that it doesn't matter. It's the same thing with, there's only two genders, and then they'll tell you there's 8 billion genders, and you try to, like, how do you even have a discussion with somebody like that? I mean, the raw facts and truth is staring you right in the face, but yet you deny that, and you try to convince somebody, or you don't even try to. The left doesn't try to convince. They just start screaming or ranting or run away. That's all they do. And so if you confront one of these people with something so basic as there's a man and a woman, everything else is in your head, they melt. Now she's saying we have to put these fights aside and declare a pandemic amnesty. The fight now is for justice, for restitution, for what you people, and I don't care what level you're at. I mean, yes, obviously the pharmaceutical, or the heads of the pharmaceutical company, the politicians, they're the head of the Hydra, going down, all the way down to the freaking mass Karens in the shopping mall screaming at people. Every one of you was a chink in society, slowly eroding and wearing it down and destroying it. And that's where the fight is now. So it's not putting the fight aside. The fight is now you need to make this right. And the only way you can make it right is by paying restitution. I'm not interested in forgiveness. Nobody was interested in hearing when they were talking about taking our jobs and force vaccinating us. Nobody was interested. And now we're heading into a global food shortage, and the supply chain is in danger, and we're going into fuel shortages. And all this could be, besides some of the policies that have been implemented from radicals, a lot of this is directly linked to the measures that were taken around COVID. And everybody loves to blame COVID. COVID did not cause a supply chain issue. Policies caused a supply chain issue. So we can leave out the willful purveyors of actual misinformation. So now, even here, she's talking about an amnesty, and then she wants to say we can leave out the willful purveyors of actual information. And you know for damn well that she's talking about anybody on the right wing. That's who she's talking about. She'll probably throw in Trump's bleach statement or whatever. Who were the actual purveyors of all the actual misinformation? Who was shutting down and chilling actual discussions on how to fix the situations that we were in? We're talking scientists that have spent their entire life studying this, that don't pull a check from the government. They actually, earn their living without government grants. We're saying none of this is effective, and we're actually out there spitting facts and will quickly be deplatformed. And we're supposed to forgive that. So while forgiving the hard calls that people had no choice but to make with imperfect knowledge, this is the problem. These hard calls that you made with imperfect knowledge always seem to involve empowering yourself and the government while taking individuals' liberties away and harming them. And you didn't care in the moment about anybody else but yourself. So Los Angeles County closed its beaches in summer 2020 ex post facto. This makes no more sense than my family's masked hiking trips. But we need to learn from our mistakes and then let them go. She still hasn't learned from her mistakes. Even now, she should just be quiet. But there's not even an apology in here. There's not I was wrong about all this, I acted horribly, I let my worst, most base instincts of self-preservation and narcissism overrule, and then I followed the herd, the baying herd screaming for others' blood. But we need to learn from our mistakes and then let them go. We need to forgive the attacks too, because I thought schools should reopen and argued that kids as a group were not at high risk. I was called a teacher killer and a genocider. I don't know. But it wasn't pleasant. But feelings were high. Yeah, that's your side doing this. This is what your side does. Is they react with extreme emotional blackmail, violence, threats of violence, and try to shut down any conversation. You can't have a legitimate conversation with the left. If you don't agree with them, they will call you an ist and try to scream you down, shut you down, dox you, or deplatform you. That's the way that they deal with things. And you want to say that we were operating in the dark and we didn't know what was going on. Well, maybe that's part of it. Maybe stop screaming like demonic possessed banshees and actually hold a conversation with people that don't agree with you, and it might, I don't know, crazy thought, expand your mind a little bit. They always want to say that we on the right are in like an echo chamber and that we just feed each other, but it's not true, because when 99% of media is leftist, every commercial show, 9 out of 10 news organizations and agencies, the social media platforms are all controlled by the left. We don't have any choice but to swim in the insanity of the left. So every day we're exposed to the left's point of view, and we have to armor ourselves. And we don't get the privilege of going through life and just screaming like maniacs. When somebody disagrees with us, we have to come with arguments that make sense. And yes, we're not always right, but when we're not right, it's kind of hard for us to stand on something because it's quickly torn apart. It's easily torn apart. That's why they don't want to argue with you. They don't want to hold a conversation with you, because as somebody from the right, you've seen all their points. You've seen all their positions because you live in a world saturated in progressive left media. They, on the other hand, aren't forced. They can easily go their entire, life really without ever being exposed to actual right-wing people, conservative people holding actual conversations with each other. It's a lot easier for them, especially if they come, or if they're in one of these big seacoast urban cities. So moving on is crucial now, because the pandemic created many problems that we still need to solve. So student scores have also shown historic declines. Whatever is high dosage. So she goes on. Many people have neglected their health care, or just been flat refused entrance into a hospital. All these overcrowded hospitals, and then there's actual pictures that are leaked during the thing where it's just empty. The hospitals are empty. So notably, routine vaccination rates for children for measles and whatever all the other vaccines are way down. Rather than debating the role that messaging about COVID vaccines had in this decline, we need to put all our energy into bringing these rates back up. It's going to be kind of hard when, even now, even though that we know that the COVID vaccines, they don't work, but now they're trying to had the CDC schedule them into the vaccine schedule, which there are, a dozen or more states that go off the CDC's recommendations, and so they're going to force COVID vaccine, or they're trying to get it to where they could force COVID vaccines, which are useless for everybody, onto children, to go back to public school. You're not winning anybody over with this stuff. If you really want amnesty and to somehow put forth the olive branch and us to come together, you need to turn on your own side that's doing this still. You don't have to embrace the right. You don't have to vote for the right. I'm not going to turn away a vote, but until you're ready to call out your own side and what they're doing and hold your elected leaders and want to say thought leaders, but there are, your thought leaders on the left, until you're ready to hold them accountable, you don't get to come over to us and say, hey, simmer down, guys. We're going to get back together and make this work, and it's going to be all good again because we got to solve these problems. That's a no-go. It's a non-starter. So the standard saying is that those who forget history are doomed to repeat it, but dwelling on mistakes of history can lead to a repetitive doom loop as well. Let's acknowledge that we made complicated choices in the face of deep uncertainty and then try to work together to build back and move forward. Fuck you. This is Rich coming from the side who wants to delete our history or rewrite our history. The people that are saying that we're doomed to repeat the history, blah, blah. You're the ones constantly trying to rewrite the history books and change history. And so, yeah, that's a no-go. And this whole, there was complicated choices being made during deep uncertainty. The problem is every choice you made was an immoral one. Not one of them was, made with, based in actual caring or love. It was all narcissistic power grabs, money grabs, and me, and I need to virtue signal and be part of the herd because this is the thing now. This is the new thing. It's why we're on the verge of goddamn war with Russia. These same people. So I found this also interesting. So this is on InfoWars, and it kind of summarizes it, and it does a better job than I could do because I'm an idiot. So, hey, sorry you lost your job because of the vaccine that doesn't work and your grandmother died alone and you couldn't have a funeral and your brother's business was needlessly destroyed and your kids have weird heart problems, but let's just admit that we're all wrong and call a truce, eh? It's too bad we shut the entire economy down and took on tyrannical powers that have never been used before in this country. Looking back, you should have been able to go to the church and use public parks while we let people riot in the streets, but it was a confusing time for everybody. Hey, I'm sorry we scared the hell out of you and lied for years and persecuted and censored anyone who disagreed, but there was an election going on and we really wanted to beat Donald Trump, so it was important to radically politicized the science, even if it destroyed our children's lives. Okay, yes, we said unvaccinated people should die and not get health care, while never questioning Big Pharma once, but we are compassionate people, which is why even though we shut down the entire economy, we also bankrupted the nation and caused inflation. You're welcome. Let's be friends. And to that, I just want to say,
okay? Nah, man. I'm pretty fucking far from okay.
hey, all you savage bastards out there. If you liked the video, maybe consider giving me a sub, a like, comment below. Let me know. Do you think that they deserve forgiveness? Should we just go ahead and say, hey, all the millions of people that you kind of murdered through ignorance and neglect and refusing to adhere to any actual scientific standards, we just forgive that. We're all good with it. Let's be buddies. Or are you more like me where you're like, no, I'm not interested. The only thing I'm interested in is a little bit of vengeance, a little bit of justice. People need to answer, and I think that there are quite a few large corporations that they need to be filing for bankruptcy. They need to be they need to be stripped, broken down, and there's definitely politicians that need to see the inside of a jail cell. We do have Guantanamo, I think. And now that I think it's mostly open, we could put our own political terrorist in there. And I think that most of them have a giant D before their name. So not all of them, but some of them. So if you like these videos, I definitely enjoy making them. And if you want to give me a like, a subscribe, anything like that, that would help. And give me a little bit of encouragement. Obviously, I'm new to this, and I'm trying to figure out what my style is and what I'm good at and what I'm not. So hey, if you have any suggestions or comments, I'm open to them. Go ahead and throw them in the comments below, and I'll definitely read them. I appreciate it. Bye.